All right, so this is our Engineering 1330 final. I'm Jacob Marlat, and I was responsible for the first half of the coding here. And so first of all, what we're doing in the first cell is we're importing all the libraries that we'll be using throughout the project, which includes NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, Seaborn, and sklearn. And moving on to the second cell, we're importing the CSV file that we're going to be using for the classification model, which is the wine quality CSV file. And then for the third cell, we use the pandas library to obtain some basic information about the file, such as the number of cells and different types of variables. And then next, moving on, we used a for loop to decide whether a wine is good or bad with a conditional statement written in the for loop. And moving on from that cell, we use the Seaborn library to obtain scatter plots between all the columns in the CSV file. And next, we had to pick our columns of interest, which in this case was a lot of cells, because all of these factors are factors deciding whether a wine is good or not. And once we got these cells in the next cell, we converted them all into standard units, which were our cells of interest. And once we did that, we had to define the test and training sets. And for our certain case, we used a 66% training set and a 33% test set. And we obtained the numbers 1056 and 533. And in the next cell, we indexed all the columns that we'll be using for the classification model. And then finally, in the next cell, we transposed the xtrain and xtest sets.
All right, so I'm Gavin Delgado, and I was responsible for the next third of the coding project. So first, I created a NumPy array of zeros with 13 columns and one row and gave it the name of theta. And then next, I implemented the gradient descent algorithm and ran it 30,000 times, which will give us the cost function, which we will use later. And then I tested the model on the training set and compared the predicted and actual results. And then similarly, I tested the model on the test set and then compared the predicted and actual results. And then I plotted the cost function, which we got earlier, versus the number of iterations and gave us the following graph. And then we used model evaluation on the training set, looking for true positives, true negatives, and false negatives. And it gave us the following results. And then we did similarly the same thing on the model evaluation on the training set, looking for the same thing.
All right, my name is Matthew Frazier, and I was responsible for the final part of the coding, which was the sklearn. So for this first part, we obviously just printed the data frame once again to get an idea of what was going on. And then we assigned an X and Y value to the correct columns of interest. And then from there, we imported a standard scaler to create a scaling of the data to have a better understanding. And from there, we split the data into the X-train and Y-train, X-train and X-test sets. And then from there, we tested and trained the sets. That way, we tested and trained the sets and getting their coefficients and intercepts. And then we evaluated the training set. And then we evaluated the testing set on the sklearn and got the same function that we got on the original code. And then from there, that was about it. This is our Engineering 1330 project management video explaining what we did and who led what area. we first start with our report on the actual coding.
All right, so I'm Jacob, and I was the leader of the interim report for this project. And basically, what that means is that I was the head for this part of the project, but everyone did their fair share. But I was the one responsible for submitting it and pretty much leading the charge in that part of the project. And that's basically what we did throughout the whole entire project. Is we made sure that everybody had an equal amount of responsibility by making each group member a leader of each aspect of the project, and then having the other two group members collaborate and work on that part of the project as well. But everyone has to have an equal fair share of responsibility in a project like this. So that's how we split it up. So I was the leader of that. And then I also played my part in the first third of the coding. And yeah.
And then my name is Matthew Frazier, and I was the lead guy on the coding. What we basically did with that was get into Zoom meetings and split up the code in equal parts so that way we all played our part. The first part was done by Jacob, the second part was done by Gavin, and the third part was done by me. We just did this so that way we could all have the equal share. We all helped each other out. And whenever someone needed some help or something, we would be on the Zoom call, guiding them through anything that they needed help with. That way we all knew what was going on and didn't have to ask any questions at the end of it saying, how'd you do this? And then next we move on to the actual video management.
All right, so I'm Gavin Delgado, and I was responsible for leading the video portion of the project. And pretty much all we had to do was just set up times and make sure everyone was there. As for leaders, Jacob had to make sure he set up a time and make sure everyone was there at that certain time. And then Matthew did the same thing for the coding portion. So, and then we just worked together and come together and then just complete the project basically in the most efficient way as possible.
And that's it. That's our video, or that's our management analysis.